Elchas Purim. So we just had Parashat Zachar and Shabbos. To clarify, it's a machlokes, the status of woman's obligation for Zachar. It's a very big fight whether you should be taking out a Torah specifically for women's careers. The mice in America, the minute for whatever reason, is they do it. To be machmir, a beautiful thing that some places do is they do mincha. They do kriyas Torah for mincha. While the Torah is out, they lean for women, so you're not taking out the Torah specifically for women. But l'maisa, not many are mekel. Tanis Esther is going to be tomorrow. Tanis Esther is a completely different fast than most fast days. We mentioned this already. It's a fast day to show that Hashem listens to our tefillah, which number one means that tefillah on Tanis Esther is probably the most important thing of all. But number two, it means that the level of fast is at a lower level, which allows for showers, haircuts, music, brushing your teeth, and mouthwash, and says that pregnant, nursing, woman within 30 days of birth, one who's a chayla, does not have to fast. On Tanis Esther, we have a mitzvah machzah shekel. Most give it, it's machlik to get it pre or post mincha. I think most give it before mincha, some give it after mincha. If you forget, you could give it even after Purim. It's a takana, and therefore we do not use meiser for machzah shekel, even though it would seem that there is makkah to be mekel. Meiser we take on that we should not use meiser for machzah shekel. You pick up the coins, you're coining them, you put it down. Do you have to give for your wife and kids? Kids and wife, the answer is no la halacha. However, some are machmir. If you're being machmir, you should do a beli neder, or else you create a neder shel mitzvah. Now we continue on Purim. After Tanis Esther comes Mikra Megillah. Who is chayev in Mikra Megillah? The answer is everyone. Well, not everyone, men and women. Obviously not children. But women are obligated. What is the obligation of Megillah? To hear every word of the Megillah. Now, before we get to the Megillah itself, if you're fasting, you're not going to eat before Megillah. But makam atzarech, if one is weak, one is sick, you're allowed to break your fast before Megillah. Obviously, if it's after the requisite time. But you're not allowed to have a suda b'manashach. You can't have a suda because you can't eat before Megillah, just like you can't eat before Menorah, just like you can't eat before B'dikas Chametz. So what are you allowed to have? You're allowed to have a snack. When is this most relevant? For a woman that's hearing Megillah later at night, even if she's not fasting, once Shkia comes, she is not allowed to have a Suda. Incorrect. Scratch that from the record. A half hour before Tzeisak Chavim, which might be Shkia, might not be Shkia, but a half hour before Tzeisak Chavim, a woman cannot have a Suda. What could she have? She could have a snack. What is a snack? Not mizaynes. She cannot have a gebeya's worth of mizaynes. That is a problem. She could have fruit, she could have drinks, she could have a cup of coffee. If there is a matziv that a woman needs to eat more due to being a chayla and whatnot, could be there is makam to be makel if she appoints a cheshaymer, but that should be asked as a shayla. Lemaisa, woman hearing Megillah later, stam, they should have a shaymer, because unfortunately sometimes things get hectic. I'm like, oh wait, shoot, I was supposed to go to the 9 o'clock Megillah laning. That's with all mitzvahs, if you're doing it later, you should have a shaymer. So now the laning itself, number one is they take the Megillah, they fold it like an igeres, they fold it like a letter. Some have the minhag that everyone with a kosher Megillah does it, not only the Baal Kari, but it's very important, and if you look, unfortunately you see this, and the Mishnah already speaks this out, these are all in Halachas Purim. This is in Sivkat and Nun Vav, in Tafrei Sadi, that you have to be careful that the Megillah has Kedusha. Number one, it should be flopping over the sides, definitely shouldn't be hitting the floor, and even just hanging over the table is not really appropriate, and therefore you should be careful. Similarly, when you roll it up afterwards, we don't make the bracha after Megillah until you fully roll it up, so that becomes a marathon to roll it up, and sometimes people get slightly violent, and rolling up the Megillah, and the Megillah's flying, it's just not. There are three brachas on the Megillah. Megillah Shatzanisim Shechianu. Shechianu by day is different than Shechianu by night. Shechianu by day is the Mitzvahs Hayoim as well. Fun fact of the day, Sfardim do not make a Shechianu by day. Sfardim have in mind the Mitzvahs Hayoim at night. If you're reading the Megillah for a woman, or if you are a woman learning Megillah, what do the women do? So generally what happens is if there are some men there, the man makes the bracha for everyone. If there are no men and the person leaning already was Yaiseh, which is a very classical case, one of the women makes a bracha for everyone. The bracha is different. It's not al Mikra Megillah, it's Lishmaya Mikra Megillah. And if there's no woman that feels comfortable doing it, which could happen, says the Minchas Yitzchak, every woman is allowed to make the bracha quietly for themselves. Important to realize, women do not make the bracha after the Megillah. If you're leaning the Megillah yourself, you do not make the bracha after the Megillah, and if you don't have a minion. So everyone here is wondering, when is that ever negeya? So let's go into issues one might have by Megillah. What's the issues? We just said Purim is the day of Tefillah, so you're davening Shemona Esrei like a men, Shalel Purim Lel Tanis Esther, but the minion didn't wait for you, and then what happens? They start the Megillah, and you're in the middle of Shemona Esrei. What happens? They start bracha number 1, they start bracha number 2, you finish Shemona Esrei, they say bracha number 3, shoot, what do you do now? Or you went to the bathroom. It happens. Or you showed up a minute late. It happens. What do you do now? The answer is the brachos are not ma'akif. That's number 1. So let's say you missed all the brachos and you heard the whole Megillah. Lamaisa, you are yaitse. Number two, you're allowed to make the brachos by yourself. You can make the brachos by yourself. Which means, what do you do? Which means, let's say that case you came a minute late, you quickly make the brachos, and wait, you just missed the first pasuk of Megillah. So the rule of Megillah is up to half of it could be from an Akasha Megillah, which means, and the rive of an Inyan, so you have to be careful, don't use that as a rule of thumb, and therefore you can lean the first pasuk out of your Chumash and catch up. Now, more than a pasuk or two, let's just be honest. It's not really possible. We could say, oh no, if you come in the middle of the first parak, you're never going to catch up. You cannot read it out of order, meaning you can't listen at the end and say, oh, I missed first pasuk and plug it in. It has to be in order, but you can make up something from a chumash. Similarly, you miss a word. The exact same thing. You could say it from the chumash. So again, now, on the flip side, let's say you leave early. Why in the world do you leave a Megillah early? Well, it's called the bathroom. Let's say you had to use the bathroom, or other reasons you might have to run out of Megillah early. Hamevin Yavin. And you had to run out of the Megillah. And you missed the last 3 psukim. So what do? You come back, you say the last 3 psukim. But now you don't say the bracha after the Megillah. That would be that case that you would not say the bracha after the Megillah. These are all the reasons why if you don't know the laning, it might be better not to use a kosher Megillah. Might be better, and I know people don't like to hear this because they want to spend money on a Megillah or have someone else spend money on a Megillah for them. But if you don't know the words, es ashar pandasa, how's it go? I said it wrong, right? The ace. Yeah, very good. Whatever it is, whatever it is, thank you. But the point is, if I don't know the words and I miss that word and I'm with my kosher Megillah and I go, now you just totally botched it. So shkoyach kosher Megillah, but you missed it. So, that's that. Whether you should be laning word for word with the Baal Kairi or not, there is a brisker chumrah not to, because you want to hear every word, but just be aware of your own ADHD. What should I tell you? If you're not leaning every word with them and you're going to miss a word, you should miss a word. Lamais, they say from Rav Yash, they say from Var and Color, that if your finger is on the place, then you assume you got every word. Meaning, even if, let's say, you daydreamed and like, oh shoot, but then you look down and you're at the right place, they say that means that you were cognizant and listening. You're allowed to lane the Megillah drunk. If you can lane the Megillah drunk, meaning there's no din. We'll get to davening. Yeah, that was teeth, right? But davening, we're going to get to. I don't care how much you can daven. If you're davening, if you're drunk, you can't daven. But if you could say the words of Megillah, you're allowed to do it drunk. Matanas Avyanim Shalach Manas. Matanas Avyanim is 2 gifts to. 1 gift to 2 different people, meaning a gift to each person. What is the chiyuv? Why do I have to know the chiyuv? The reason we have to know the chiyuv is because that's the amount you cannot give from meiser. Says Mishabura quoting a ritva, a pruta. How much is a pruta? A pruta, a penny, a dollar, a nickel, a quarter, a shekel, whatever it is. That's the basic chiyuv. Above that, you're supposed to give a suda. Above that, you're supposed to give a chash of a suda. I did see that Haley Rabbi Stein wrote that the minimum he wanted to say, I think the minimum is, he wrote $5. I think he wrote as the minimum. Lamais, the Mishnah does quote that Shava Pruta, you could be Mekalon, and therefore anything more than that, you could give from Meiser. What should you give? You should give Behidr. What's Behidr? So they say anywhere between, $10, $20 an ani, which is for you and for your wife. Each have their own separate chiyuv. Again, let's call it, I wrote over here $3 to $14, because we're trying to figure out what a meal is. That's how we figure out the Hidr. That's how the Gedolim taught us. And therefore, a Hidr, some want to say, what do you mean? For you, is $3 a meal for you? No, so do what your meal is. Well, for me, a meal's, I go out to eat, it costs me $75. Okay, so maybe there is a level of Hidr to give the ani, what for you would be a Suda. What many people do is they double dip, because you're allowed to use mice or anything more than the basic chiyuv, and therefore you get an extra mitzvah. So if you give out your meiser money on Purim, you get a mitzvah of matanas aviyadim, and you get a mitzvah of meiser, and therefore you can do it. Yes?
Can I give for my wife?
100% you could give for your wife. They say l'chumri, you should tell her that you're giving for her. Hopefully, Yeah, now what does it mean, kol ha'pashiyah, nice and light? Whoever sticks out of their hand, you give to them. It means whoever sticks out of your hand. However, if you chayshit the guy is a crook for real reasons, then not necessarily do you have to give. That might be the answer to a difficult Hilchos question. That on Purim, you're not supposed to be particular to ensure that he actually needs the money. But like if you really have a real chash, that might be a different story. Mishalach manais, what do you give? You give 2 gifts to one person, nothing to do with 2 brachas. It's 2 items. L'chayr, the maple syrup and waffles is not going to work. Maple syrup is not pashtus. It's not an item. Which is more important? We spoke this out already. What's more important, of course, is matanais le'ev yoinim. And even though Mishalach Manos was instituted first, that was just to create the level of giving. Okay, the communal Mishalach Manos, everyone realizes, not necessarily your Yitzir Mitzvah with those type of things. With the shul Mishalach Manos, number 1 is they don't always give out food. Number 2 is not necessarily is everyone getting from every person. Okay, but everyone's giving out more than one. There is a chumrah to give with a shliach. Men shouldn't be giving to women shouldn't be giving to men. We try to keep gender appropriate Mishalach Manos as well. Tvilas Kalim, we're not going to get involved in the shayla. If you're giving an item that needs to be titled, it's a massive shayla, and we don't have time to deal with that right now. So what's after Mishalach Manos? Matanas Avyonim. We Kriyas HaMegillah. Now we're up to Sudas Purim. So what is No, not necessarily. If you put money in a box of Purim, you don't know that it's been given to Nani. Matanas Avyonim has to be given to the Aniyim. So every organization has figured it out. It's very simple. You can give them with check. You give them with credit card. You give them whatever they want. They give all on your behalf, and then there's brayer and all these fascinating things. But give it to a reputable organization. I mean, if you're giving to one place and you realize, I put it in stucker box, it's not collected. Usually they have things on it. Has to be in by whatever time, and this and that. Those in Yerushalayim obviously give on Yerushalayim Purim, not Chutz La'aretz Purim. What time are you supposed to have the Suda? Now this is one of those things that in America has been a little bit of a lost art. The Ramah itself, the Ramah in Taf Reish Sadi Hesef Gimel says the Ramah Roiv of the Suda is supposed to be by Yoim. Roiv, that means majority. And he says it's a nice chumrah even to bench during the day due to saying Al Anisim. Now, it seems like for some reason people have gotten into the minhag of benching washing before Shkiyah. L'chayr, that's not correct. L'chayr, you're supposed to have Roiv of the Suda by day. I don't know, is it Roiv in Echos? Is it Roiv in Kamlos? Does it mean how much you're going to eat? L'maisi, you should eat something by day. What, Shkiyah is at what time? Shkiyah is 5:40. You shouldn't, L'chayr, it's not right to sit down at 5:30. Do you have to sit down at 3 o'clock? But you're supposed to have your Suda by day. By day is supposed to be your Suda. What? Yeah, if L'maisi you bench after Shkiyah, you do say Al Anisim. But it's now benching. We're not going to have time to talk about. Okay, let's go very quickly. We have 3 minutes. You have to say Al Anisim. If you miss Al Anisim, says the Mishnah Berurah, you might not have been Yotzei your Suda. If you missed Al Anisim but you're middle of benching, there's a Harachaman, which look in the bencher always to say, certainly on Purim. Yasal Anisim and flies Kashem Sha'asal Avsein B'Yamim Mizanazah. And then you say Al Anisim. You also could see that in Shmoina Esrei. If you missed Al Anisim, it's pretty pathetic. Purim's only one day, and you missed it. You didn't have that many tefillos. So during El Kai Nitzar, you say the same thing. Hi Ratzayin Mofanecha Shetasal Al Anisim, and then you say Al Anisim Lamaisa. If you missed it, you missed it. There's nothing you can do. When it comes to getting drunk, Chayav Inish Lebasumei Ba'Paraya. Lemaisa, there's multiple ways to be engaged in the mitzvah. Number 1 is the way the Shulchan Aruch says, Bein Arham LeBaruch Mordechai. Number 2 is you can't calculate the gematria, that's a Magen Avram. And number 3 is going to sleep. That is you can't do it right now, right? Number 3 is falling asleep. Now, what's very important, and this is not a debatable point, if you're going to be Oiver and Aveira, it's for sure forbidden to drink. It's going to be Oiver and Aveira. Oiver and Aveira. Now, what's an Aveira? Aveira means an Aveira, which I tell you. Any Aveira. I don't have to list Aveiras. Everyone can do that on their own time. But usually the matzav is, depending on where you are, usually dictates of what happens. And one has to plan, you have to plan appropriately. You're not a good matzav, you'll end up having a good matzav. If not, it's all one big aveira. And the way that we have it over here, it's very nice. If you look at the Beis Yosef in Hilchos Purim, he quotes an Orchos Chaim that screams about getting drunk. And then you look at the Shulchan Aruch and he says you're supposed to get drunk. So how do you reconcile those two things? So the easiest reconciliation is one is you're doing aveiros and one is not. If you end up doing aveiros, then it's a dreadfully terrible thing. And if you're not going to end up doing aveiros, then it could potentially be a beautiful thing. Are you allowed to drink other beverages aside from wine? The answer is in Shulchan Aruch it does not bring down wine anywhere. It just says you should get drunk. In Shulchan Aruch, in other places like Rashi already, the Rebbe Rashi in Mesechus Megillah, the Rambam, etc., says yayin. It's a beautiful hider. If one can't drink wine, etc., you're allowed to get drunk in other things. But the lesson from the Surgeon General is I don't believe anyone has ever, I don't know if this is a true stat, I think it is, I don't think anyone has ever gotten alcohol poisoning from wine. I don't think it's physically possible because the amount of alcohol in wine and the amount of liquids your body could physically hold, it's basically impossible, and therefore you also will save your life, whereas all the other alcoholic drinks, that's when unfortunately you could get very, very deathly ill. And I'll just repeat the line from our Yeshiva, I'll never forget it. Our got up one year in Erev Purim, and he said, I don't want to be maspid you at your levaya, so please don't kill yourself. And it sounds pretty gruesome and terrible, but unfortunately it's not a joking matter. And therefore, what?
Who said that with the wine irrelevant?
No. What do you mean about wine? Oh, the Surgeon General. Oh, it's a look it up. I think it's I don't think it's like a chiddush. I mean, it's just the amount of alcohol in a wine and the amount of liquid.
Without the alcohol.
You could be sick, you could be everything, but you're not going to die, chas v'shalom. Whereas blood poisoning from alcohol could, God forbid, kill a person. Finally, you're allowed to bench drunk. You're not allowed to daven drunk. If one davens drunk, what does the Gemara call you? A toyeva. Pretty dreadful. It's a different place that calls it a bazara. Lemaisa, very good. If you don't daven drunk, what happens? Says the Gemara in Brachos, you get wonderful brachos you get if you don't bench, if you don't daven drunk. Lemaisa is a little bit of a level that we're saving more in Purim than the rest of the year. A little bit. You still have to be Aimid Lefnei HaMelech, but no, I don't know. Rishos.
Like you have a rishos, like there's
No. If you're completely drunk, there's no rishos. It's also it's a teifa. You're not allowed to daven in that matzah. There's a little bit more of a level, meaning at a lower level of alcohol. The eitzah always is daven mincha early in the day, and then ma'ariv you make sure you have a shomer and you daven ma'ariv. I don't think we have to mention that using drugs is certainly not nichlal in the things. No. Daven mincha. Then you only drink after. Eight to time. You daven mincha to whatever time, and then one drinks, and then you get ma'ariv later in the day. That's an interesting shayla. If this would be l'chayr, it is. We know that b'makam atzerich one is allowed to daven ma'ariv plag. Maybe you're running until it's getting pretty close. No, you can't have ma'ariv 12 o'clock. Daven ma'ariv at plag. Plag's like 4:30. Okay, listen, teach their own. And the Maisa, that is